10th of September from 1 to 5 p.m. at 246 Ornack Street, Ornack, for a golf tournament. And the Rotary Club of Concord on the 10th of June from 1:30 to 7:45 p.m. at 58 Main Street in Keyes Road for the Jazz Festival. Now we have an extension of hours for the Saltbox Kitchen on the 15th of May, 9 p.m. to last call at 8:30 p.m. for a private event at 84 Commonwealth Avenue. And now we have a proclamation on behalf of from Concord, committing to recognizing our growth and strength for the International Code Council on Building Safety. And rather than put everybody to sleep at the beginning of a select board meeting, I think I would just read our last paragraph, which doesn't end our thanks, but just keeps the meeting moving. Whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider commitment to improve building safety and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. We're lucky not to have too many fires here, but there's lots to be thankful for. Now, therefore, I, Jane Hotchkiss, Chair of the Concord Select Board, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2018 as Building Safety Month. And accordingly, I encourage our citizens to join with their communities in participation in Building Safety Month activities. I'm not quite sure what those are. And then we move on to just a few one-day special licenses. Concord Academy on the 29th of April from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at 166 Main Street, and all alcohol. Saltbox Farm on May 1st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 40 Westford Road, wine and malt beverages. Saltbox Farm on the 12th of May from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., 40 Westford Road, wine and malt beverages. The Hostess LLC, I'm not sure what that is, on the 5th of May from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 74 Walden Street for wine and malt beverages. Concord Country Club on the 4th of May from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., 246 Ornack for wine and malt beverages. Also, the Country Club on the 11th of May from 6:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., 246 Ornack, wine and malt beverages. And then we have a lot of 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Concord Country Club one-day special licenses on the May 18th, June 6th, June 7th, June 15th, June 23rd, June 24th, June 28th, July 12th, July 19th, July 20th, August 3rd, August 4th, August 17th, August 30th, and September 20th, all from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., 246 Ornack, wine and malt beverages. And then also the Concord Country Club on September 6th, September 7th, September 8th, September 9th, and September 10th from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 246 Ornack, wine and malt beverages. And finally, the Rotary Club of Concord on the 9th of June with the 10th of June as its rain date, 1:30 p.m. to 7:45 p.m., 58 Main Street and Keyes Road for wine and malt beverages. Again, that's the Jazz Fest.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I abstain from the minutes?
Yes. Yep. Okay, and I want to welcome, and I should have done this at the very start, our newest select board member, Linda Escobedo. She joins us here tonight for the first time officially, and while we miss Steve, it's great to have you.
Thanks very much. I look forward to working with all of you and to serving the town.
Mm-hmm. Great. So next on our agenda is to elect a new select board chairperson and clerk. Do I hear a nomination for chairperson?
I move to nominate Tom McCain.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think we need a new clerk, too.
I don't know, could he do double duty? Let's think about that.
So. I move to appoint Mike Lawson as clerk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And there, I pass the torch.
Well, I want to thank my fellow board members for the honor to serve as board chair. Pledge I will do my best not to make you regret that decision. I've been fortunate to have these past 2 years a great group of other board members, and I'm sorry to see Steve go, but delighted that Linda joins us. I've also been fortunate in my 2 years to see both Mike Lawson and Jane Hotchkiss as examples of the chair of the board and hopefully learn from the experience. Jane this year has been especially helpful in providing me with insight into the role of the chair, and I look forward to having Mike serve as the clerk and help keep me on the straight and narrow. Jane has demonstrated great discretion and patience as chair during what has not been an easy year. She's allowed the citizens of Concord to express their views on a number of topics on which there has been disagreement, and this has been to the benefit of the town. I fear that I lack her patience and have asked her to give me a gentle kick under the table when I display impatience or disagreement with the point being made. And as such, I'm now in the market for a used pair of shin guards. So without further ado, let us proceed with tonight's agenda and the town manager's report, which Kate will be giving us.
That's tough to follow.
Wearing your shin guards?
No. So I'm Kate Hodges, the assistant town manager. The town manager, Chris Whalen, is on vacation this week, so I'm covering for him. So we don't have too much. Road projects are starting up this week in town. Monument Street drainage will be worked on from about the bridge to the Balls Hill Road area, and it will take about 3 weeks, and that includes a mill and overlay. CPW is also working on Hildreth Street, Indian Spring, Lowell, and Barrett's Mill Road this week and next for more road work. A large town tree that's located at 62 Church Street is slated for removal this week, so it may impact that roadway a little. The next Nagog Pond hearing will be held on May 5th at 7 p.m. in Acton.
April
April
26th.
26th.
Unless something happens.
I don't know. This is from the DPW director, and he said May 5th today, so
April 26th.
April 26th.
Unless something happens today.
No,
Yeah,
April 26th.
All right, I will write to him and
make sure.
he knows.
Or maybe we're all wrong.
Comments and feedback regarding the draft of the comprehensive long-range plan are due to Marcia Rasmussen, the Director of Planning and Land Management, by this Friday. The Building Inspections Division will be starting a pilot program for evening hours. They're going to begin that in May and run through November, and it will be on Thursdays. They'll be open until 8 p.m. And while experimental only, they believe the hours will help homeowners and builders in town have their plans reviewed and have more flexibility to speak with division employees about projects and designs, but they will not be doing inspections during those hours. The police department has partnered with the Natural Resources Division and will be hosting a discussion on the eastern coyote at the Willard School Auditorium at 7 p.m. tomorrow. And the focus of the discussion will be in resolving and preventing conflicts between humans and coyotes, including learning how to recognize coyote behaviors and appropriate methods of interaction. And the presenter for this is Pat Huckery, who serves as the Northeast District Supervisor for Mass Wildlife. That is it.
Any questions from anybody?
Just want to make sure that 26th and the 5th are figured out.
Yep.
Leave that to Kate to figure out.
Problem.
Well, we now, I guess, will move to a public hearing. I will just announce for the record that this meeting is being recorded by CCTV, and that anybody who comes to testify, we would ask that you identify yourself and speak loudly into the microphone so that the TV can pick you up, and also people here can hear you. So with that, I believe we have, do we have anybody from Verizon to testify? I believe there was somebody going to be from the Concord Municipal Light Board? Atlanta.
That's very,
Yep.
Did
Sure.
Yeah, if you would
If you don't
comment.
Well, we have to open the public hearing.
Meantime, shall I move?
I-
Move to open the public hearing, the poll petition Verizon and Concord Municipal Life Plan, 200 Lexington Road and 9A Cambridge Turnpike.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm Jeff Cosgrove, production engineer for the Concord Health Department. Good evening, everyone. Assistant Town Manager, members of the board. Good now? Just in place of Verizon, we're basically looking at relocating an existing pole along Cambridge Turnpike. This pole is labeled Pole 5. It is basically, the issue with the existing location is that with the Concord Museum project, part of their driveway, essentially it's in the way, and they've asked us and Verizon to work with them to relocate this pole to the easterly side, towards the Lexington Road side, in a temporary location.
Temporary.
Temporary.
Yes,
So
temporary.
how long would you imagine that pole would remain there?
That really depends on the CPW's or the Public Works project, because this section of our roadway is to be undergrounded by all utilities.
Right.
So I prefer not to give a time frame on that, but
Yeah.
that is part of so it would be a temporary relocation at this time.
And it's temporary because the road is going under major construction, all the utilities would be underground.
That's correct. So it just unfortunately doesn't work out to be at the same time, but a little bit of overlap.
Anybody have any other questions?
Who pays for this, the pole?
Certainly. Typically, if it's a third-party applicant, such as a museum, they would be responsible for the charges of the new pole and for the cost that Verizon or the town would potentially adhere to. If it's a Verizon or town request, typically there's no exchange.
And how long does it take to move a pole?
It really depends on all the utilities involved. To set the pole, it's really just a day's worth of labor at the most. And then from there, it starts with the highest utility that's on the pole, which would typically be the town electric department. And from there, that would be transferred, followed by Comcast, and then followed by Verizon.
It's a busy
Just-
road, so.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
certainly.
So what do you do when it's a busy road? And is the road closed for a day while you're doing it?
No, we just we work with the Concord Police Department and and the public safety officers to schedule details and to make sure that the crews stay safe for sure. But that way, you can at least keep the road open.
Avoid rush hour.
Yes, that would be
Both
ideal.
ends.
Certainly.
That's the goal. Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the museum here would like to speak? Please, yes, come forward.
I'm John Farrell. I'm the interim director of the Concord Museum, and while our search committee does its work to find a new
Nice to see you.
director, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm on the board of the museum as well, so that's why I'm the interim director. The museum is paying for this. It's more than $7,000 the museum is paying to have this pole removed because we're not sure when the utilities will be buried. And we're building, as you know, a new addition there, and we'd like to have access to the driveway for our buses, primarily for our school programs.
Thank you. Any,
Seems like the project is coming along, though, really, really nicely, and
It is coming along. We hope to have a completion in August and public opening celebration in September. So
Really?
Wow.
That soon?
we, if we're on schedule,
Wow.
and on budget?
that's the schedule.
Oh, that's great.
and although I know it's not related to the direct issue, the museum had a very successful Patriots Ball on the 14th. I think it was enjoyed by a lot of folks in town.
Thank you. We had about 250 people there. It was a nice evening, and we hope to do that every year now, and I'm sure it'll grow over the years ahead.
Thank you. Does anybody in the public want to make a comment?
I
Ready for a
move
motion?
Move to close the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
I knew that would happen.
You prompted me, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Now we move
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the meeting for NAGOG is Thursday evening, the 26th at 7
good.
PM.
Thank you.
Rain just confirmed.
Okay.
Thank you. My apologies.
I thought maybe I'd have a free night, but
Do we have a motion regarding agenda item 5?
well, we haven't taken, agenda item 5 is we're taking a vote on whether to approve the poll petition. We only got as far as closing the public hearing. Is there any
Yes.
other discussion
I'm
among us?
Any discussion? Or?
ready to-
Ready for motion? All right, so I would move to,
I think they thought it was all done already.
I know it is. They don't understand procedure. Anyway. I move to grant permission to CMLP and Verizon New England Inc. to relocate utility pole number 5, 24 feet southerly from its existing location to be owned by Concord Municipal Light Plant and Verizon New England as requested in the petition plan marked for a OE 5QP, dated December 28, 2017, and is noted in the order dated April 23rd, 2018.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ayes have it. The item number 6, because of the moratorium, the board cannot act on this petition, and they have asked that the application be withdrawn. So we will move to item number 7, which is the common particular license Concord Brewery Inc., doing business as Rapscallion, 208 Fitchburg Turnpike. Is there anybody here? Would you come forward and address the board?
Welcome, welcome. We've been waiting for you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for appearing again.
It was a long
you could
6
just-
months, but we're here.
Address where you are now and what you're looking for.
Correct. My name is Peter Daniel. My twin brother and I own the company in Concord Brewery. This is Carlos, who's our general manager. He's at all the locations with me. And then this is Michael Toronto, the Toronto family. Tom couldn't be here, and he's the property owner and landlord. And just for the record, in case you guys pick up on it, in the application, the convict, Gina, is the manager on duty, but she apologized. She couldn't be here tonight. She's got taken an extra day from last week's kid vacation. They're in Virginia visiting their other kids, so. But she'll be the manager on duty as well there.
I think she's already been approved as manager,
Great.
so that
I think, yeah.
we're all set on that.
Right, okay.
And so it's basically, it's a change of name as much as anything that we're dealing with.
Correct.
I think we've already approved all the usage and the people who are going to be managing it. So anybody have any questions?
Do you have all of your other licenses? I know that the Board of Public Health and,
Correct, yeah. So since we were last year, and I can't recall, maybe it's been 6 months, it was fall. So that was the process. We had to, with their direction and what they required, we had to essentially redo the whole inside of the building, which is a good thing. So it's pretty much a new build out inside. We have a great relationship already with the Toronto family, Michael and his father. So they were through the whole process with us. So we worked with the building department and the health department pretty frequently. And, I think I kept saying, I hope they had patience with us, kind of what Tom was alluding to earlier. And probably in the beginning, it was probably tough to work with us, but in the end, everybody was happy, I think. And so
When's planned opening?
we hope to open tomorrow.
ooh, that's exciting.
So
Yeah.
guys, you know where we have to go tomorrow?
Yeah.
Select board meeting.
Yeah.
So we got approval about 10 days ago to at least start doing test kitchen stuff. So we've been in there after the board of health said, you can start practicing, which they were very understanding of saying, hey, you guys got to, get ready, because when we knew this point came, we'd want to open immediately. because like anything, it's staff and utilities and rent, it all costs money, so.
How similar will the menu and offerings be to your Acton location?
Yeah, it'll be a little different. It'll be very similar model and culture, but the food will be focused more on seafood, raw bar. We'll be doing Belgian beers exclusively for that location, as they go very well with that type of food category. But very, very similar as far as, what we do at our other 2 locations as well, as far as culture and business model. Just different menu.
Great.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Anybody in the public would like to make a comment regarding this topic? Yes, we're ready for a
I'm
motion.
ready, yeah. I move to approve the application for a common victualler license for Concord Brewery, Inc., doing business as Rapscallion. It is currently designed and approved for seating of 57 seats.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Having you in
Yeah.
Concord for a long time.
Yeah, it'll be nice. It started here almost 20 years ago, so
Great.
it's nice to come full circle.
We're glad you're
That's-
back.
Great.
Yeah.
You guys have been very welcoming and good to work with, and I know Andrew and his staff as well have been very good, so
Great.
thank you.
We probably met Gabby White, and
Yeah, so, yeah.
she's usually pretty helpful.
Yeah, no, it was, like I said, we're not, we were calling ourselves Dumb and Dumber during the whole process. We can say that often to her and her staff in the building, meaning like, we're not, we're not general contractors by trade, but we did a lot of the work.
Yeah.
And the Toronto's helped us, so I think in the beginning, she was like, oh boy, I gotta deal with this and a lot of it, but in the end, I think, it was a good thing, so.
Right.
Nice to see the cooperation, everything working
Yeah,
out. so.
absolutely.
I have more skills.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to
Or we
coming there.
learned- We learned a lot, that's,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And congratulations.
Thanks.
We are now ready for the reports of the Financial Audit Advisory Committee and Mellison Health, the auditor, who is present and forward and present.
Good evening, Scott McIntyre from Melanson Heath and Company. I'm the partner or shareholder in charge of the Town of Concord's audit and by extension, the audit of Concord Municipal Light Plant. And I appreciate the invitation to come in tonight and give you a quick walkthrough of our audit process as well as the financial statements. It is not our objective to walk through the entire comprehensive annual financial report or CMLP's standalone financial statements. We've met on a couple of occasions with the Financial Audit Advisory Committee and gone through the reports in an appropriate amount of detail. And tonight is really just designed to be an overview. And we think the most important communication that we can make to the select board or maybe in other cases the city council isn't so much to talk about the numbers, but to just give you an idea of how our audit of your financial statements went. And, I'm very pleased to be able to report that our audit of your financial statements, and again, that includes CMLPs, went very well. In very basic terms, what that really means is we found the books and records to be in good working order when we went in to perform our procedures. Key bank accounts, key receivable accounts, long-term debt accounts, and things like that were reconciled for the most part on a regular and timely basis. And we really did not, and as a result of that, we did not need to propose any significant audit entries. Had a brief delay with CMLP as CMLP had some turnover last calendar year, and a brief delay on the town side with waiting to obtain some actuarial valuation reports. Concord, like every other community in the Commonwealth and across the country that has what is known as an OPEB or other post-employment benefit trust, you needed to implement a new accounting standard last fiscal year. And again, Concord, like a lot of communities with that trust, experienced a brief delay because there was a substantial amount of additional actuarial valuation work that the communities needed to have performed. But by and large, it really was just a brief delay. You submitted your CAFR, or your Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, to the oversight agency called the GFOA, a National Government Finance Officers Association, with the expectation that, like your prior year Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, will receive what they call their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And as the name implies, of course, it's a very, very comprehensive document. I'm going to speak very quickly on the town's CAFR. It's my understanding that the select board members have it. If not, I'm really just going to hit some high points. Page 29 begins really the town's long-term perspective financial statements. Preceding that is our audit opinion. And in summary, our audit opinion is that your financial statements are totally in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And following our opinion up through, and just preceding page 29 is management's discussion and analysis. I may refer to that as MD&A. It's a great resource to go back to at a later point in time to understand why certain key account balances may have changed over the prior year. Brings you to page 29, and for those that may have it, this is considered your long-term perspective financial statements. We're going to look at the general fund and the short-term perspective in just a minute. On page 29, the focus here, as it is for almost all governmental entities, and not just here in the Commonwealth, but there's two key accounts here: your NPL, or your net pension liability, and your net OPEB obligation. Again, the OPEB being the other post-employment benefits, and by other they mean other than pension. Those two liabilities, it's only been a couple of years now, but they're present on your long-term perspective financial statements. If you choose to look at that in that first column of numbers, second number up from the bottom, you see it's in parentheses, and it's because of the NPL and the net OPEB. Now, to just put that in perspective, the retirement system is a very well-funded retirement system, and you certainly are operating under a funding schedule. So I think it's our responsibility to inform the readers of these financial statements of these two significant liabilities, but I also want to put it in perspective, in that it is a well-funded system, and you are on a rapid funding schedule with respect to your net pension liability. I can answer any questions that the board may have on either of those two accounts. But it does take us over to page 32. Page 32 is really the first place that most readers are going to turn to and look at your general fund. And the focus almost always is on that third number up from the bottom, or your unassigned fund balance, with a June 30, 2017 account balance of just a little bit more than $11.6 million. Again, that's the third number up from the bottom in that first column of numbers. As is adequately in our observation disclosed in your management's discussion and analysis, that key account balance of about 11.6, it's decreased by about $3 million over the prior year. And again, as I noted, your management discussion and analysis does a nice job explaining why that was a planned event. It's not down because operations or the revenue performance wasn't there, the expenditure performance wasn't there. Page 22 outlines exactly the choices the town made to use some of its existing resources, predominantly in the use of free cash, for one-time expenditures. And we think that's the appropriate way to disclose it in MD&A, because if a reader just looks at it and sees it's down $3 million, it certainly needs a little bit further of an explanation. And lastly, on page 32, I indicated that the unassigned fund balance was down about $3 million, but your total fund balance, the second number up from the bottom there, of about $35.5 million. That's virtually unchanged from the prior year. And to get a little bit of a perspective as to why it was unchanged, if I could ask you to turn your attention over to page 36, which is your budget and actual comparative schedule. And the focus here on page 36 is in that last column of numbers. About halfway down the page, you see total revenues and transfers with almost a favorable variance of about $1.2 million. Very simply means that the revenue performance exceeded expectations by $1.2 million. About two-thirds of the way down the page, you see total expenditures and transfers of a little more than $300,000. Those represent unspent appropriations provided for the town departments. Collectively, that's about $1.5 million. But to start the year, the town planned on using about 1.4 million of its existing fund balance. And then when you plan to use your existing fund balance, you're sort of expecting that the outflow of resources will exceed the inflow. So the positive revenue and expenditure performance really matched and replenished, or almost replenished, if you will, the planned use of the fund balance. So you see the net bottom line on page 36 is about $112,000. And I realize that's not exactly break even, but that's why, back on your general fund balance sheet, the overall fund balance is essentially unchanged from the prior year. There's a wealth of disclosures in the notes that reconcile not only the various bases of accounting, but also between the short-term perspective financial statements and the long-term perspective. For those that may be looking at page 36, if I draw your attention very quickly over to 37, these are your enterprise funds, and the column in the middle there is your electric fund. There is a standalone set of financial statements for CMLP that I believe has been provided to the board. Again, I can try to answer any questions that you may have on that. There were a couple of recommendations we had both for CMLP on some improving some issues with respect to capital asset disclosures and the documented oversight of cash reconciliation. I don't necessarily mean cash reconciliations, I mean the documented oversight. And from a town perspective, if you happen to have the management letter there on page 3, is we're recommending at first to minimize some year-end timing issues. I talked a little bit about OPEB, and then I imagine it will be talked about even more in the coming years. There was a timing issue that resolved itself post-June 30 of 17. But given the importance of OPEB and to provide as much clarity as possible, we're recommending that you look to eliminate timing issues. The issue is as simply as if a bank transfer is made shortly after year end, if someone asks the treasurer what's in the OPEB trust, they're going to say one thing. And even though there may have been a reconciling item that clears very shortly thereafter, but you ask the town accountant what's in the trust, and you could have two different numbers. Again, it resolves itself very quickly after year end, but we've noticed that it's important to resolve that and bring a little bit more clarity to the situation. And lastly, on the bottom of page 3 is to ensure compliance with uniform guidance. It's not too often that the town, exclusive of the school department, is a recipient of federal awards and has those awards tested as part of a single audit. But nonetheless, a year ago, or approximately a year ago, the federal government came out with some additional guidance called uniform guidance on how to establish or design the best internal control structure and reporting associated with the receipt and expenditure of federal awards. So just a couple of recommendations there. And again, this has been a very, very fast overview of our audit of your financials, including CMLP. And I tried to hit some high points. Again, your management discussion and analysis, I think it starts on or about page 15. It's a great resource for most readers to go back to. I was going to say some of the things I touched base on quickly tonight, but it also says a heck of a lot more as well. So, and with that, I'll try to answer any questions that the select board may have.
Is the report on the town website for people? It is.
It is.
Good, okay, so the public has access to it as well. Anybody have a question or comment?
So I was just curious about when you were doing the audit, how did we interface with the Financial Audit Advisory Committee? And what was that, I'd like to understand the relationship between the two, because I know our committee is still fairly new.
This is, I think, our second year and a full year in existence, third. And we meet, like Wendy Ravelli, Carol Wilson, Wally Johnston, Arthur Fullman are all part of the financial.
And you.
And me, audit committee. We meet periodically, and we've met with Scott and his team for the schools, for the light plan, and for the town audit. And I think it would be fair to say it's fairly extensive and detailed discussion that we've had with the auditor and his team. And then we've raised issues. I don't think we had any in your packet. You had reports from the audit committee for all three of the entities. and Scott will be at the school committee tomorrow night, giving them an overview. Essentially, our report sort of laid out what this select board had asked a financial audit committee to do. And then we have brought to your attention, I think, in previous years and this year, issues that have been raised by the auditor in their management letter, and you talked about them for the town, including the timing variances at the end and ensuring compliance with uniform guidance. I think we've had fairly extensive conversations with this year with the life plan in particular, in addition to the discussion we had about the auditing. There were issues raised by the audit committee around the rate of return at the life plant, and also the level of unrestricted cash. As you may know, the town has a policy or a guideline about the level of free cash that we would like to see, both a minimum and a maximum. And we're within that bound now. But the life plant does not.
As a policy, the life plan.
Does not have a policy. And so the Financial Audit Advisory Committee has recommended, and I know Wendy is on the life plant board, and they're taking up the matter.
We're discussing that because we think as we're setting
We
Yeah,
should
if
have,
you could come up. and-
Wendy Ravelli, 42 Bow Street, Concord, a member of the Light Board. So the Light Board's been discussing the unrestricted funds that we have available, particularly in light of discussions we're having around setting rates. And we, as a board, feel it's important for us to understand and have a discussion around what that cash needs to be. There's been some history of using free cash for building buildings, actually. So we need to have a real discussion about that and understand what's reasonable. We are self-insured. We're very mindful of the need for planning for any potential disaster, et cetera. So it's a discussion that started, and we hope to have a policy around that over the next few months.
Thank you.
great, thank you.
So both the free cash level and the rate of return was something the audit committee discussed and made recommendations in their letter. So I think we met 5 or 6 times this year with some timing issues that caused us to meet a little more often. I would ask other members of the committee if they've got comments that they'd like to make. I would certainly like to hear them. Carol, Wally, Arthur?
Just that we've got a lot of new regulations to deal with and review.
Arthur?
You have to tell us who you know.
Speak into the, you have to speak into a microphone.
Arthur Folman, 64 Nurse Neck Hill Road. We've met several times, as Michael mentioned, and we've had to deal over the last 3 years with many new regulations and policies, both at the federal government level and at the accountancy level, and we've been guided through that by Scott and his team. It's been an education, and we hope we're doing what we're supposed to do appropriately, which is to report to you that things appear to be in order and that we have a good relationship with the accountant team.
Great, thank you.
Is the change in regulations supposed to slow down in the next few years, or?
I sure hope so. The regulation that I think is being discussed comes down from the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It was only a handful of years ago they were at their 54th statement. Now we're well into the 80s. It's been rapid. But I don't have a crystal ball to predict what they're going to do.
I just have a question about the pensions. Am I right that we're about 85% funded?
I think I wrote down this evening 882, but I should have anticipated this. The 82 that I reference goes back to 12/31/16. So you'll have a new valuation that comes out that captures everything through 12/31/17, and it may be that the funding percentage goes up at that.
I thought I saw that we were about 85, and that was the high end compared to a lot of the other cities and towns around.
Are you talking
But I'm
about
not-
OPEB? Or
Excuse me?
is that OPEB that we're, I'm not quite sure I understand what we're,
The pension liability of the town.
Pension, not other post-employment.
Right, just
Not
pension.
OPEB.
Right.
Okay,
And
I didn't hear it, that's what I was asking.
I
Sorry.
saw it was, there were a few others at 85. There weren't many above that. And there were an awful lot that were around the 50% level. And I guess my question is, how comfortable should we be at 85%, or should we, the goal, I guess, is to get to 100% at some point.
I think you should be very comfortable, whether it's 82 or 85, and obviously the new report will come out to capture everything through the end of calendar year 17. And I say that because you're on a funding schedule, and I apologize, I don't have the number off the top of my head as far as how many years that is out that you are scheduled to reach 100%, but it is.
So it was 2030, which,
2028.
2029, I'm hearing from
Okay.
the finance director, which is more rapid than many of our systems that we work with in the Commonwealth. So the combination of the fact that the funding percentage is as high as it is, and the planned or the scheduled funding progress is as rapid as it is. I think that that's why, that's when I talked about the long-term perspective, and I felt it my obligation to speak about those two liabilities, but I also wanted to put it in perspective, is that it's something from Concord's standpoint that are being managed, handsomely.
anybody else have any?
No, but I would like to, in addition to thanking Scott, not only for his time tonight, but he and his team have been always forthcoming with anything we needed. Also like to thank our finance director and her team. They've done a great job of getting all this stuff put together in a timely fashion, and have helped us understand a lot at our advisory committee meetings. I'm grateful to you as well as the members of the committee over here.
Well, the AAA bond rating makes a big difference. And I think last year we saved money by refinancing some bonds, so that, it's a much nicer way to balance the budget than raising taxes. So we're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Scott. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, at the school committee.
We are now ready for the discussion of scheduling the special municipal election. Gary, this has to do with the, particularly, the opt-out of the marijuana, the Warren article on that. Now, there may be other items that will be addressed at the vote, but you've prepared a memo for us, so why don't we go ahead on that?
Okay, thank you. Kari Maitari, Town Clerk, and the memo that I'm presenting is fulfills the second part of a two-part process for the town to opt out of, or decide on whether or not to opt out of the non-medical marijuana establishments. The first having been satisfied with the affirmative vote for the bylaw. There are three different options that I presented. One being as soon as possible, which would be providing the language of the ballot question next Tuesday, for instance, and then 35 days from that, which is the minimum, would put the election at June 12th with a cost of $13,500. The second option is the special election to be held in conjunction with the state primary, which is scheduled for the day after Labor Day, September 4th. That cost, which would be just additional cost for additional election workers, food, ballot printing, that would be $6,675. And the third option is to have a double election during the state election, which does have early voting. The state primary could potentially have early voting, but that has not been decided right now. So that has more cost because of the early voting ballots that we'd be required to print.
So if the special election did allow for early voting, the cost would go up for that.
Right, if the special election happened in conjunction with the state election, we would have to provide early voting for that as well.
So any time that it's in conjunction with an election that we're going to do, if we have a town matter that we're putting on a ballot, that we follow format, and we would provide early voting options on our issue as well.
Right now, the law is just with
Just the
the,
general
with the
election.
Just the
general
general.
state election.
Okay.
Yes.
I forgot, do we need to supply the state with language for them to approve? before
No,
it
because
goes-
we can't put that question on their ballot. We can only put Proposition 2.5 or community preservation-related questions on the state ballot, so we don't have to provide them with language for that. It is a separate ballot completely.
And are there any other known to you likely special election, municipal election issues that we'd need to coordinate with?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Anybody else, any questions? Does the public have any comments on this? I think the thought.
Oh, we got a comment.
Yes, please come forward.
Hi, Wally Johnston, 1479 Main Street, member of the school committee. Not speaking for the school committee, but speaking with knowledge of the school committee. It may very well be, it would be valuable to coordinate with the schools around this issue. I'm not sure if there will be something, but we did pull an article from the warrant at town meeting, and that may come up again. So depending upon what happens with special town meetings and that kind of stuff, we may have something we would want to put on that ballot.
So are you suggesting that that would be a reason to not go for option one, which would have as early as June 12th being a,
I don't want to, if you want
Election?
to do June 12th for this,
I'm just asking whether you would prefer.
I can't say, we have not voted on
Okay,
anything, so I just know that it's
in the office.
been discussed, so I wouldn't hold off on what you think is the right approach, but I would keep that in mind.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And notify us if an issue does come up, so we can coordinate it.
Think about it.
We have miles to go.
It strikes me that I'm not sure if I see the advantage of doing it sooner than later. The advantage of later is we get to see kind of what other communities are doing, what the Cannabis Control Commissions, their regulations, perhaps a little bit more detailed, and we, in all likelihood, would have a higher number of voters.
Well, I think the number of voters is probably that and not spending more money would be the two reasons to think about delaying it. I would want us to talk to the planning board because they're going to have to go forward as irrespective of, well, as long as there's an unknown, they have to move forward as if December 31st is their deadline. They may choose to do that regardless, I don't know. But if we're delaying this until November, that's a different planning horizon for them.
As I understand it, the issue can come up at any future town meeting to allow for retail, so.
But as I said, they may
Probably not-
decide to put in the
Yeah.
regulations.
It's not a bad idea to have them
Right.
anyway, so
Right.
that'd be the way I would look at it. But,
Yeah.
I don't know what other people's thoughts are.
And what you're referring to is the fact that just because we voted to opt out at this town meeting, it could be proposed to opt back in at any later town meeting, and then I guess the question I have that I've not asked is if we opted out and we also passed that opt-out language at the ballot, and then we opted in at a town meeting, would we also have to have a special election for that?
We'd have to look at the regs, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
The law wouldn't
Yeah, I mean, it's
specify
sort of,
that.
The regs came out right before town meeting, and I
Right.
don't think any of us were able to spend the time to analyze what they meant. And there are even public hearings still scheduled
Yeah.
on the regs.
it's a murky area.
Yeah, it's still murky. So are we looking for a decision tonight?
Well, Andrew sort of suggested that there may be, we may want to see sort of exactly what the language would be before we take a vote on this.
Well, the language would be exactly what was voted on at town meeting,
The word for word.
word for word. So we know what the language is, or we should, right?
I don't know what off the top of my head.
The law may have recommended language
Yeah.
that has additional
I would
words,
like
but
to
I'm not
hear
sure.
what the planning board's plan is.
Yeah, I
Are
agree.
they just gonna move ahead?
Their plan on all of the meetings leading up to town meeting was that they needed the moratorium and they would plow ahead because of a lot of work. Because what they need to do is, if the opt-out fails at the ballot, they have to have regs in place, which, since their zoning regs requires a town meeting to be able to approve those regs, right? So they have a lot of work to do, and they won't know what the answer is.
Right, I mean, we may need a special town meeting for the planning board
Yeah,
regs,
planning board.
regardless of anything we do. So,
To have
this
regs
is
in
gonna be a
place by
busy year.
December.
But that would take place only if the ballot measure failed to be adopted, right?
If the ballot measure chooses to allow retail sales,
Then we'd have to have a special town meeting. But if it
Yep.
banned establishments,
well, then still need the
then-
regs in place.
Right.
Then the town would need to have zoning bylaws about where and how, they'll need public hearings, public meetings to determine.
wouldn't need to have a special town meeting then.
Well, it depends on their schedule. It depends on whether or not they want to make sure their regs are in place by a certain date.
No, but if the town votes to ban establishments,
Right, to continue the opt-out.
whatever time we plan to do this, then there's no reason to have a special town meeting to approve
Right,
regulations.
right.
It might come up at the next regular town meeting if there's again a warrant article that tries to reverse it. But
Right, so that's the time, that goes into the timing of this, which is how soon, which is why we should talk to the planning board, because when is their comfort level?
They're planning on moving ahead and starting immediately on thinking about how we should regulate if marijuana is to be, retail sales are allowed in town.
I don't
So my
s-
question for you is, are we thinking about pushing up a townwide vote to accommodate whatever the outcome is for the planning folks? Is that what you're thinking?
well, no, I was thinking, I wouldn't want to have the vote on the general election date, November, whatever.
Oh, you
date.
wouldn't?
I wouldn't,
Oh,
because then we would have to have a special town meeting sometime
Right.
between then and the end of the calendar year. We'd have to get going on it, right? And that seems to be a pretty compressed window to try to get all of that organized.
so that's an interesting point. I mean, I was holding out thinking that was probably the best date for us to hold a townwide election because it most likely have the largest
Largest
voter
turnout.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the day after Labor Day, unfortunately, I don't know why the state decided to hold primary elections. It's not a great day, right? People are just getting back into town. They haven't been focusing on state elections, let alone our own
There's a
town.
lot going on locally. I mean, we have our state rep there's an election for that.
Right,
We have the Congress
Congress.
and women's election.
But this is a
as well.
primary vote, so fewer people vote in primaries, especially the day after Labor Day. They'll come out and vote in November. So the question is, if the idea is to try to potentially help the planning board in scheduling, which they haven't asked for, we should think about whether that would be an argument for
Right.
moving up the date for a townwide vote before people
Exactly.
go into a summer vacation mode.
So maybe we can put that question directly to the planning board for Alice, you're the liaison.
And then we can vote on it perhaps the next meeting. Do we have that information, do you think?
Well,
So if we vote on it the next meeting, if the planning
Then
board,
then the new, sooner date changes.
the sooner day is no longer June 12th, it goes more, another 2 weeks into the summer.
well, school's still in session though, so I think folks are pretty much still in town.
Isn't school in session year-round this year? A lot of snow days.
So
Well,
a special town meeting calendar might be useful for you to look at to see what the public hearing dates for planning board, because that's what really adds to the timeline.
Right.
That first notice has to be posted at least 2 weeks prior to they open their hearing.
So what's the elapsed time between we're gonna have a special town meeting and we have it?
At least 3 weeks.
I was going to say 5.
So if it's in November,
Probably more
where
like
I don't even
5.
think we have time.
Yeah, well, because we
So
have to
really a
consider
5-week
the-
planning
yeah.
time horizon is what we're hearing.
Yeah,
Right, so that's not, and
we're
so
not
that
gonna do
rules
it,
out
no,
the
we
general
Don't
election.
wanna do the general.
makes it very tight.
It makes it tight. It depends on what venue we use for special town meeting. If it's the auditorium at the high school, although it's not popular, that one is easier. Has a little bit less need for rentals. We certainly wouldn't need to rent chairs. The setup is there, it's permanent. We could use the CAF as overflow. But I think, you know, we probably could pull it together in 5 weeks. It wouldn't be,
Yeah, but 5 weeks from the first week in November is,
mid-December.
Right.
you're in the holidays, I mean, we'd be shot.
And would they have any
Well, why
time to,
would we have to do it on that time frame? Why couldn't it, if the planning board says they're gonna go ahead and start preparing regulations and zoning ordinances now, and be prepared for a December rollout when the moratorium that was voted in at town meeting ends. So they'll start now, and they'll have from now through November. And if it happens that an election is in November and the people in town decide they would like to permit recreational marijuana, there'll be regulations already done.
but we won't have had a town meeting to,
They can do that. The planning board can move their zoning ordinances, their zoning proposals to an earlier town meeting, even without the townwide vote. Because you're gonna want some regulation in place in town, should it come back to a future town meeting. So for them, it makes sense to keep on moving forward on their schedule. And that's the conversation I'm
Well,
recalling.
that's
having.
not, that, to me, the issue is just having a special town meeting near the middle, end of December.
Well, why can't we do that in September,
January, but-
October? The special town meeting would be to bring forward zoning ordinances that would help the town regulate
so we would do this
recreational-
independent of our ballot election.
Because, so, I think the worst-case scenario is that we'd have regulations in place, not knowing the outcome of an election, and if the electorate decided
The
ready to
town meeting
have,
costs money, I mean,
I forgot fiscal conservative on the
well,
board.
it isn't inexpensive.
But they're going to have a public, they're gonna do a town meeting anyway, because they're going to move forward with their regs. Well,
why would they move forward with their regs? If we voted next week to ban
Right, to-
establishments, why would they make regulations?
Wouldn't it make sense to be able to have a vote knowing what the zoning requirements the planning board decides? And that would be a good time to, people would then not have the fear that you're gonna have the
That's a good point, too.
establishments, you know, next door or in a
Right, they'd know
supermarket.
exactly what the,
They know exactly what they're voting on.
well, what they're voting on is how it's regulated in town isn't what they're voting on at the polls. They're voting on the polls, just the language that was approved at town meeting, which was, opt-out
It's a
for
bylaw,
recreational
right.
marijuana
But they would know
only,
that if
but
they
other
voted
establishments.
to
but if they,
allow-
if they reversed it, they'd know where it was.
But what they'd be voting on at the elections is separate from whatever regulations are in place. It may inform voters.
Right, that's
That's my
what,
point. And I think in being informed is not a bad thing for voters. 'Cause my feeling was that they weren't informed necessarily on this one, so. I think that actually may be the best of both worlds.
So your suggestion is,
Let the planning board go ahead,
And figure out when they want
Yeah.
a special town meeting, period.
yeah, and then we can vote in November. And people will know what they're voting on.
it's a good argument.
Thanks.
Well, regardless, we're clearly not gonna make a decision
Right,
tonight.
tonight. So I'd say, we probably will come back soon with this.
But I think I'm not quite sure I'm with you on this, but I think we are ruling out not doing it now. I think I've not heard anybody
Yes, I
argue
think
in
that,
favor of trying to get this done
By June 12th, or,
by June, some day we're gonna do it, in the fall, either coincident with the primary or the general election.
yeah. That would be my position, sir. Everybody happy with that?
As a clam.
everybody confused?
Well, the planning board is meeting this week, and I'll offer a public comment at the end and suggest that we talk about a schedule.
Well, I guess it's not, does the public have any comment on this right now? Okay. We are now board comments on the draft comprehensive long-range plan. Mike, you were kind of,
You did an amazing job.
Yes,
Mike.
thank you, Mike.
Well, everybody contributed. So we have a draft of our comments that we pulled together from all of the select board members. My thanks to each of you for that. So we haven't posted these yet, and I don't want to post them. I want everybody a chance to read them and to be able to comment. So my suggestion, Tom, is that we ask everybody by some date certain to get any comments that they have to this to Andrew, so we're not engaged in a discussion. And then we can Andrew and I can pull them all together and produce a final draft that we can get on our agenda.
and they're
Well-
looking for the final comments.
They need it by the 27th,
Yeah. So.
so
that
we
gives
won't
us-
have a,
So,
that gives us-
well, you can authorize, I think the board could authorize me to send comments essentially as drafted.
Right.
But give us a couple of days
Yeah.
if there's something dumb that somebody said in here or you forgot something, and Linda didn't really have a chance to
weigh in.
weigh in on these yet, so we could incorporate them, but I don't think there's gonna be anything, wild and crazy coming. So maybe a motion to authorize.
I would move to authorize Mike Lawson to prepare the comments from this CLRP draft and any additional comments to be sent to the CLRP Planning Committee by the due date of April 27th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I ask Kate, because Kate, you said comments to Marcia, but do they go to Marcia or do they go to, I would think they would go from us to the planning committee.
From you
to-
guys, yes, right. That was
Copy
just for
Marcia.
town staff.
Yeah, certainly copy Marcia.
I note that we are verbose. We commented on the report in 10 pages.
No. I must
We were
say that we, as usual, we should be grateful that we've got town citizens and staff willing to devote so much time and energy. It's a comprehensive report. If folks haven't read it, you really ought to.
Right.
There's a lot of background material, a lot of statistics in it, and a lot of ideas. And I think one of the tasks that the select board is gonna have is it's almost, I won't say overwhelming, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to figure out, the priorities
The relative
associated with some
priorities.
of this.
And
And
which committees, because there's going to be a lot of overlap in terms of some of the issues.
Absolutely.
So tied together, you talk about housing and then you talk about land use.
Right.
It's all.
And that's actually, having been the liaison, that's an intentional, one of the purposes of this kind of approach from the American Planning Association is that it's horizontal. You should be able to find a thread and pull it all the way through. But that does make it a difficult, it's a lengthy and difficult process to boil that down into something that looks like what we're used to, which is, this is what we're doing.
And I think the challenge is going to be in the implementation in terms of trying to get all the individual departments and committees and so forth to be looking at this in an integrated way, which is what
Which is like behavior change, and that's kind of what we're after.
Yeah,
We've
that's
got
gonna-
10 years
gonna-
of this plan to make it happen.
Is the assumption that the committee, upon completion, sort of will go their own way, or will be some sort of a monitoring, or? what
I
is
have
the-
never heard of a monitoring. This was a committee comprised a few town members at large, but also from people from all the other committees on it. And I think once the stamp is done and it lands in our lap, I think that it will be done.
Well, it then becomes the working document for the
Right.
planning board.
For
And
the
so
planning
every
board.
year, Marcia does come to this board and
Right.
she accounts for the items from the previous 10-year, long-range plan, the items that were addressed or taken off the list for whatever reason. So we get a progress report yearly.
On a staff level, that's what really drives our department head requests for things too. So just knowing that this was coming up in my budget, we put in money, or we requested money for economic development, both programming and to have somebody develop a plan. It wasn't ultimately funded, but those are the type of things that I think we're going to be seeing, not just from my divisions, but from others too.
Anticipating the kind of recommendations that are going to come through.
6 or 7 of the identified, big ideas that were in there were things that we had already put into either this fiscal year's budget or next fiscal year's budget. And some were funded and others were not, so.
Well, you could sense that when you were reading the section that I read on facilities. It was, I'd heard that.
But that's great. I mean, it means that it's already becoming internalized, and that's,
There did seem to me to be some things which are going to take quite a long time, but there are other things that probably could be done pretty rapidly.
Yeah, we called, there was a lot that was representative of both tourism, recreation, facilities, and
Bicycle
economic
racks.
development, which happens to be at least 4 of my divisions. So that was great because it really allows us to sit together as a team and come up with some goals and objectives that will then, translate into budget requests, so.
But I'm hoping, though, that when the select board receives this document, though, we're able to provide, I don't know what the right word, so I don't hold me to it, but some toning or some direction to it. I think plopping this down on a set of town departments, there's just too much there.
Yeah. Well, it's not to be done in 1 year.
No,
So it's helping to set priorities, and priority funding will come back to the select
that's
board.
what I'm hoping, that when we finally get the report and have a chance to talk with these folks together, that we can help do that.
prioritize.
And that's gonna be hard, because most everything in there is pretty worth doing.
I guess my feeling was that there were a few things that could be done pretty quickly.
Sure.
And I would hope the build a little momentum is always
A
helpful.
lot of that, going back to facilities things, a lot of that stuff is already in the works.
Yes.
It's not like we have to go, oh, really? We need to.
Yeah.
Most of those cross over more than 2 or 3 departments and
Right.
divisions too, which is really great because it ends up sort of having this common goal that many of the departments can work together to achieve. And I think sometimes we can get a little siloed with our own areas of responsibility, and, this sort of
I'd be
makes
really,
us have to, come back to the
be
middle.
really interested in asking Marcia in particular, if you go back to the 2005 plan, and then this plan, which had this kind of, this planning society template, I don't know what the right word for it, but it was really detailed, you and I.
Right.
Was that really helpful to them? And compared to the 2005 plan, was this easier to do? I mean, it would be interesting to know if that was a very useful.
Yeah.
It'd be good to know, actually. It's a good idea.
Well, we definitely know that this approach and process has involved Concord as a whole in a way that I don't think any of its predecessors did. And that is that's a change. And hopefully that will, one of its benefits will be that there's greater buy-in and interest in and excitement for some of those items that will likely result in budget requests, so.
Once the committee gets the draft information, what is their anticipated time to have their final report?
There's a public hearing this Wednesday at
Right.
7 o'clock at Willard School.
Everybody in town should be there.
Everyone in town should be there.
There won't be parking, though, for everybody, which is one of the items.
So there will be, so I think that's the next big step, is taking this draft report to the public for comment. Now, I think all the town, your town departments have commented on the report already, or
We're finalizing.
finalized
Yeah.
it, right.
Yeah.
So all of that, somehow these guys are gonna, really, the 27th, they'll have time to get that in, huh? Okay.
And then once all of that takes place, the final report should be
Well,
by-
they'll outline the next half of the calendar in
Okay.
terms of actions and planning. Because there's a lot of work that has gone to this point, and a lot of work, as Gary and Elise have said, now in some respects, they're just getting started on their heavy work. This has been a lot of idea generation up until now.
I think the plan is to have another draft, which probably, most likely won't be the final, but within a month.
Right.
Okay.
And there's some other things that I've been working on. You can see when you read the draft that it says insert something here. And some of that has been a progress that we've been making and that Marcia's team has been working on while other people are reviewing the meat of it. So I think the next draft that you'll see will be different.
Okay, so comments to Andrew by the 25th.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's Wednesday,
yeah. Get this all tomorrow.
so I can get this done and to the committee by the 27th.
Great.
Fair enough?
Okay, we have our marching orders.
Any public comments at this point? We'll move right along then to the board liaison reassignments, or new assignments in Linda's case, for 2018, 2019. There are a couple of pages that were in our packet. I will be taking the, I guess as the chair usually does, being liaison to the Finance Committee and also to the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
And I was going to offer to take several, because as the outgoing chair, I've had those, which means my load just got significantly lightened. So I'd be happy to take the Historic Districts Commission and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and
Probably the PEG Access
the PEG
Advisory.
Access Advisory, and then perhaps the two cultural district
Yeah.
pieces, which would tie into some of the other things I've done, and I've been working with both.
I can do hats.
Okay.
And there would also, you probably the Junction Village Open Space Task Force, or is?
Sure. The one, I don't know if you've had a chance to, but the one committee that it's going to have long lead time, and I think continuity is going to be really important, is the 2229.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the two of
to
those,
the new kid.
the
Yeah, the other, the nuclear
2229 and
metals,
the planning.
property reuse planning committee.
Yeah. So I think
Alice can't be on either of those.
Right,
Does
they
that
only have a year left.
make sense for you, Linda? Now,
It
you're
does, yeah.
fairly heavily involved with the housing. You would, I think there was some thought some of these regional might make sense not to have Linda in the first year.
I think it's hard. It's a hard position to be in, to be the regional representative to our either 13 towns or 4 towns until you're comfortable and knowledgeable. That would be my thought, and, there's a lot of committee work. that may be next year.
And those were the hats?
Hats and HFAC.
Would that be something that you might take on, or?
I can do them for a year.
Yeah,
Sure.
Do which now?
hats and.
I'll do hats.
Okay, so Mike's got hats.
I would do hats.
So would you
Okay.
do HFAC?
Sure.
Or-
Yep, I'll do that one. Are there any committees that you want, Linda? Things that you're particularly interested in? Council of Aging, if you want White Pond, you could have that. Anyway,
Public Works,
I'm sorry?
Public Works.
Public Work, oh, you can't have that. Oh, no.
All right.
I was gonna say, now the real stuff
Oh,
gets
no.
revealed. Yeah.
I waited too many years for Public Works.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted planning board for a long, I had it for 1 year and then it was removed.
And she wouldn't let me have Board of Health when I got on, so
All right,
it's tough.
I love my committee. I'd like to finish that Minuteman Building Committee, because we might be done in
Yeah, be done by about,
maybe.
And who is the Community Preservation Committee?
I currently do.
You do.
If you would
which
prefer
one?
that, I mean, had that, and,
So,
You're familiar with that.
I'm familiar with
Exactly.
that.
Which one?
That might make a lot of,
okay,
CPC.
sure,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
you should jettison stuff like that.
yeah.
I would say the CPC, so I used to do Council of Aging, really like them. That might be a good one. You can't do
Your list
Council
is
of
now
Aging
getting very long.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
I'm happy to take the Youth Coordinator Advisory Board.
But now your list is getting long, isn't it? Or not? Do you still have
Well,
room?
I think some of these things are going to be, like the Cultural District Advisory Committee. I mean, some of these are more work than others. So I've got Bruce Freeman, Historic Districts, and the 2 cultural districts.
I think Youth
And pay.
Advisory only meets quarterly anyway.
Right.
What do we've got, in addition to this stuff, we've got a new cable,
Cable TV Advisory.
CCTV.
Yeah, that's the
what-
PEG. I took
PEG
that.
access.
PEG access, is that what you call it?
yeah.
Okay. And then we have to decide about whether or not we're gonna have a committee on resiliency, or we're gonna fold it in, but we're gonna have, part 2 of the Energy Futures Task Force.
Yep. Yeah. Which I'd like to take that one.
The Junction Village open space.
I'm gonna do Junction Village.
Be on it, can be liaison.
I don't know, but did you get the email I sent you?
Now, the Sustainability Resiliency Committee is not in existence, so we might not have to decide.
Well, we might not do it either. I mean, remember the warrant article said a committee or
As
add
part
to
of it.
something. And we've got the one that's more critical for us to get a charge on is the part 2 of the Energy Futures Task Force. And my suggestion is that we write that to see if we can include resiliency in that.
There is a draft that we've been working on since town meeting.
So that's great.
I think we have
Yep.
Kate's
can do-
comments today that I didn't get to
Yeah,
read
and
yet,
if
so
we
that'll be
can
ready
do
for our
that,
next meeting to circulate.
And, Alice would be a great liaison to that, but my only concern about that is this is her last year.
Right.
And I know whatever this is, it's gonna have a tail on it. But
But
she's
you
a-
get us
but
going.
she's
in the
Maybe you
right
can
direction.
start it,
Just
and
got
I
it
would be
started
happy
on-
to
to take it from
take
there.
that.
Okay.
Since not all of these are going to probably. So Andrew, did you manage to?
What are you doing with dog park, Tom? Are you
I
keeping
think
that,
Tom
or?
is.
I'm keeping
Don't you
that,
think
yeah.
So
Tom?
what are you keeping, so we know that you're giving up rail?
Okay, I'm
trail,
keeping the Board of Assessors,
Okay,
Commission on Disability,
okay,
the Concord Public Schools I'm adding to,
finance.
the
committee.
Library Committee, Finance, Library, and the Dog Park.
Okay,
Finance.
so we need to
Finance,
find
yeah.
someone to take Council on Aging, Historic Districts.
Linda was
I took
taking
Historic
Council on
District.
Aging.
And Jane took
Jane.
Historic District.
I didn't raise my hand for that, but it sounds like that's what I'm doing.
Too bad.
It's not all
Here,
democratic.
Tom, it's your job to assign. What we should do, we could all take this piece of paper, put in our number of choices, and you assign the rest.
Perfect. We figured, Linda, that you've got the youth coordinator, so you should have the aging as well.
I
Oh,
think
you got the youth,
Jane's going to take the youth coordinator.
So I'm keeping everything except the schools.
Yeah.
And I'm adding hats.
So I like Alice's idea. Let's email Tom
Yeah.
with what we understand our choices are, unless,
Yeah.
Andrew,
And
you've
then you-
somehow managed to keep up on all of this.
And then you
We can do
can
both.
assign. Okay.
Is there anyone who would like public ceremonies and celebrations? It's on my list at the current time.
You'll love it.
Okay, good.
That's actually, right, it is one of the more fun, and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
one comment.
Council on
was that-
Aging is fun too.
I love council on aging.
I think you're really gonna
I
like it.
did that for years.
And they have snacks.
Oh, the enticements here.
Well, I think you've got enough to
sorry.
just produce.
Yeah, just to be the, right. And you'll get pulled into things that you,
No, I know, yeah. No,
Okay.
I've seen.
So- So the list you read is firm, right? You're set. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Okay. And that included the Finance Committee and the Library Committee, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. We all set on that one and move along?
We send you the our must-haves, and then you can design the rest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, we now have the review of the status of the dog enforcement order. On checking on compliance, it was reported that the new backyard fence that had been ordered by the select board has not been installed. I spoke with Police Chief O'Connor today, and he spoke with Mr. Hitchcock regarding the non-compliance and received assurance that Reliance Fence was coming to the property on Wednesday, and that he will provide the town with a copy of the contract to have the fence installed, hopefully within 2 weeks. Since the February hearing, there have been no complaints of the dog being outside the home in violation of any of the other conditions. The thought was to make sure that we get a copy of that contract. Andrew tells me that to have the hearing, he places in the newspaper notice of the hearing, and that requires about a 2-week lead time. So I think the thought would be that should there not be a contract provided, then we would put the hearing on as soon as we can, hold it with giving the notice. If the contract is in place, then we would wait to make sure that the contract is completed.
So my only question is, in the order which he agreed to, it says that the fence must be installed, not a signed contract by April
No, that's
1st.
right. He has not complied with the order.
So
No question. The question, I think, is a practical one, which is, number one, fortunately, there has been no violation other than that, so that the fact that the fence has not been installed has not resulted in the dog being out or there being any further problems reported in the neighborhood. I think given the weather during the month of March, and also my understanding is that Mr. Hitchcock may have lost his job, at least temporarily. I think the question comes down to kind of, what do we do at this point, just on a practical level? We could, put and have a hearing, and let's say the fence is put up between now and the time of the hearing. Are we going to, at that point, say, because you didn't comply by April 1, we're going to take action and either have the dog exterminated, or what are we going to do?
So I wonder, shouldn't we, this had a date certain in the order, and I'm wondering if we should have a date certain for the contract. It's one thing to have a contract, and it could linger on for a month, 2 months. And the argument that if there are no complaints, there's no problem may not be accurate. I think we heard a lot from neighbors.
Right,
who
and we
have
also
been
heard a lot
terrorized
from
by a
neighbors,
dog.
right, neighbors who are uncomfortable
Yeah.
making complaints.
Yeah.
So, I guess the question is, from my end is, if we post a dog hearing, and in the intervening time, we don't need to have that dog hearing, is there any problem with canceling it?
I wouldn't think so.
Because that seems to be one way to indicate that we're very serious about following through on
Yeah.
this.
Well, I think the fact that the chief himself spoke to Mr. Hitchcock kind of, one would hope that the message was pretty loud and clear. But I don't,
He gave us his assurance that this fence would be in.
right,
by
At a
the-
public hearing.
By the
Yeah.
deadline.
yeah.
So the fact that he's now telling us that it's gonna be in by some other deadline is,
Skeptical about it, yeah.
well, I don't know exactly how to view it, but I don't think we should just say, okay.
No,
So I think we should, if there is a date certain that the fence will be in,
yeah.
I would suggest that we schedule a hearing at a date proximate, but after that assured date, and we
Well, I think
publicize it.
certainly if there is not a contract provided, we move forward as soon as we can give notice and have.
And you said he had a contract?
No, he
No.
says they're coming on Wednesday
Wednesday.
in order to, provide the contract and I guess tell them, see what's going to be required.
I'm a little disappointed that after hearing the amount of concern from the community about the fear of this dog, 2 months have gone by and there's no contract. He could have had a contract in February
Yeah.
or March to meet an April 1 date and postpone the contract implementation, but to be starting now.
Well, I don't
feels-
disagree at all. The question gets to be, how much
What
do
do you
you
do?
punish the dog for the dog owner's negligence or inability to follow through? And I don't know all of the, where the details. He hasn't come as soon as he found that there was an issue and said, I've got this problem, is it okay? Let me speak to somebody and deal with it. But I'm afraid that's kind of the nature of the person, that that's why we had the problems
In
for
the first
5 or
place.
6 years in the first place.
Right, and to echo Alice's point, I do think we also owe, in our actions, resolution to the entirely full room
Yeah.
of neighbors who came and spoke.
Yeah,
Because it
there were
wasn't,
over 15 of them.
yeah, it was,
It wasn't a minor.
and one of the themes of everyone's comment was, we don't ask for help anymore because we don't believe it's ever coming. And that's something that I take seriously this isn't about an action anybody in this board
Right.
wants to take.
Yeah.
And I think most dog issues start and end with the owner.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
you're
that's-
correct.
So,
So the plan would be to see what happens kind of this week, and if we have a contract and the date, I would expect the date should be within a couple of weeks to have it installed. If it's not,
Is that what he said? It could be installed in 2 weeks?
I'm not sure, the chief was the one that spoke to him, and I'm not sure to the extent that the details
Did
of
you have any-
when it would be. Is what?
I just heard what you heard. I talked to the chief, who said that.
I would recommend that we set it one date certain this Friday to have a copy of a contract, and another date certain 2 weeks from this Friday to have the fence installed, and then to schedule a hearing at the next
Yeah.
Monday.
So that would be the 21st
Of-
of May, be a month
May.
from now, because that will give me enough time to put the newspaper ad in and also let abutters know about that
okay.
as required.
But it's again 2 parts to it. It's
Yeah.
a contract by this Friday in the hands of Chief O'Connor, and then an installation of the fence as previously required, no later than 2 weeks from this Friday. And then to schedule a dog hearing for May 21st. I guess I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Second?
All in,
All in
second.
favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, aye?
Aye. Yeah.
Okay. Any public comments? Then we move to committee liaison reports. Linda, I would be surprised if you had one, so.
I actually, I did attend the Concord Housing Development Corporation. And they potentially need 3 new members, so anyone interested in going on the Concord Housing Development Corporation, please put your green cards in. And I also know that the Concord Housing Authority is also looking for people who are interested in going on the committee.
Right. Mike?
And the Housing Authority is an elected position, correct?
So
Well,
there's,
it'll be an interim position that'll be jointly appointed by the Select Board and the Concord Housing Association until the next town election.
I met with the Pollinator Committee, but they didn't have quorum. But we are, after tonight's meeting, the committee will be at full strength. And then I met with the Ag Committee on Thursday night, and we have some nominations for that. They're deep into their planning for Ag Day, and had a pretty robust discussion about financing and a possible food truck. So
What day is Ag Day? It's usually
September.
September.
September is usually the 9th, 10th. I don't think I have it written down.
And the select board,
Yeah, I was going to say
for
to
many years
Linda,
has had a
who doesn't know.
presence.
Yeah.
Do our little table there.
It's a great green card day.
I think it's the 9th. I could check. I have.
Saturday, or is it Saturday or Sunday? Because Saturday is the 8th.
Could be the 8th.
Could be the 8th. And it's also
Saturday.
the day that the police and the fire department have their, I don't know what the official day of it is, but all kinds of activities for kids, and it's great.
They lock them up and have fun.
No, I don't lock them up. The first year the chief was here, he had I don't know, kind of a dog it's called, but a dog that can sniff out explosives, and he brought it from the MBTA where he'd previously been and put on a demonstration of the dog finding some dynamite, I think. So it was pretty cool. The kids loved it. So
They gave out ice cream.
they give out ice cream.
Oh, you remember the important things.
Would you have therefore attended?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Want to go?
I attended no committee meetings last week as I was on college tour.
Uh-huh.
Fun.
I attended a lot of committees in the last week and a half or something. At first, Andrew was going to remind me, and he did so, that this is going to be the second year that Concord is going to be we're making awards for preservation.
Oh, those are great.
So this is the second time that we've done this. The last one was 2 years ago. This is going to be on May 17th, I believe at 5:30, and maybe at Concord Art Association, but I'm not positive. Had an unusual name. And so what the committee does is review significant new or renovation projects that are historically significant and are, classic reuse and beneficial reuse of properties as well as additions. So I haven't seen any of the nominations, but I hear that there are some fantastic.
No, I thought 2 years ago they did that at the select board meeting.
They did it. So that was the first time that they had done the preservation awards, and we did it in the townhouse in the hearing room at a select board meeting. So this year they're having it in another location. We're all invited to go and to hear about the projects that are winning the awards this year. I attended the Minuteman School Building Committee just today, actually. I think you saw the photos from the topping off ceremony. The building, here's my news for the day, the building is on schedule and on budget. And it has a perfect safety record so far. So on safety, building
I
safety
ask
week.
you, is it a preservation event, a nighttime event?
It's a nighttime at 5:30 on May 17th.
It's the Pasture Club.
I think that's May 16th.
I have it written down as the 17th.
17th.
Uh-oh. Oh, 5:30,
That's not good.
well, it's not for us, great, but I think that's the date. Maybe, wait, take it back. We should probably look into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I may have the date wrong, if I'm
Well,
lucky.
maybe we can have them
It's
come
in the
and
clipboard.
re-present it at a
It's in the
select
clip?
board
Yeah.
meeting
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So we should look at the clip, I can't remember. So I participated in a walkthrough with the state, and I think you were there, and Chris and Marcia and Steve met with the state at Junction Village. And they are narrowing this year's funding for the construction projects. We are still in the running. It was a good walkthrough. We were able to, we had a strong show of force from the housing community, from the town, from the select board. They were quite impressed, not having been out there before, that there's a perfect rail trail that would go from Junction Village right into West Concord town. And they thought that was like pretty
This is
amazing.
for tax credits?
This is for the tax
Tax
credits.
credits, right.
This is for being awarded the tax credits for this year. So it was a good walkthrough. Attended the planning board meeting. I should let you know that we have a special planning board meeting this week where at 7 o'clock is a hearing on Cafe Nero. We expect a large turnout
Huh.
on Cafe Nero
At Kai's Road?
at Kai's Road. I attended the cemetery committee. What a great group of people.
Oh,
Aren't-
I miss
know.
that. It's a great
Yeah,
committee.
it's a great
Oh.
committee. So now they're working on their master plan, so it's, my comments are due on the master plan by the next meeting. Great committee, doing a lot of good work. They're working on the Melvin Memorial, getting it
Wow.
renovated.
Whatever happened to the discussion of a crypt?
That's still in discussion.
Still in discussion?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
CSEC is moving fast and furious to implement Heat Smart. It has a time-sensitive end date, and the end
I saw
sometime next
banners
summer.
up over 62. That was,
Oh, I didn't see those. I knew they were going up.
There's one here too.
yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
That raised the issue whether we should have banners for town meeting.
Oh.
Well, I can see a lot of reasons for banners if Heat Smart gets them.
I attended the light board meeting. Were you at that one? There's a lot of discussion about, I think, Mike, you were there, a discussion about rates. I circulated the progress report, how the light plant has advanced goals of Article 51. And there's a public meeting that is being scheduled or has been scheduled.
It's been scheduled.
Has been. Is that early May?
I believe
Yes.
it's,
I think that's a May event as well.
May is
And
going to
this
be
will
very
be
busy.
a public meeting on their comprehensive plan, their strategic plan.
How about candidates for Chris Roy?
Yeah, well, at the last meeting, he had not accepted the position yet. That would be a great loss for Concord.
I
It's
think
a
it's the
huge
light
one.
plan is May 17th.
Another May
Another one.
17th?
Huh?
But that's in the morning.
That's, I think it's,
no, but it's going to be at 7 p.m. at Harvey
Ooh,
Wheeler.
that's May
and-
17th.
Yeah.
Aren't there?
And CCTV is going
Is it
to
May
tape
17th?
it so that it's live.
that's a trifecta then. We've
Uh-oh,
got
that's Pastor, he said.
The Pasture Club and the Preservation Awards.
Yes,
on.
it is, from 7 to 9.
Wow.
Something needs to move.
Well, I don't know which. Okay. Do I have anything else? Oh, I attended the Public Works Committee, which is a great committee. You can have it when I'm gone. Heard about the roads program. There's a roads hearing. You heard from our assistant town manager what the roads program is about for this year. A lot of work. Tree removal, Still a lot of demolition debris from.
Now, I have to give my take my hat off to everywhere I've gone, there's more trees that don't seem to be public shade trees that are depositing their limbs to be picked up by our public works in the public way.
You can do that?
I
They're
don't
smart pe-
think
yeah.
that you're supposed to do that, but I am noting that these are not public shade trees that are depositing their limbs at all, or either that or I've missed the
Some
trees.
towns do allow that to be done.
I think the
Not
CPW.
where I live. We had to rent our own chipper.
Yeah, I think
But
CPW said they're not
CPW
going
is,
to.
yeah.
I think they're being
great.
very generous with
They are.
their time and services.
They're good people.
We've received a number of very positive letters in terms
Absolutely, well,
of their
and they deserve
response.
those,
Yes.
yeah. Now, the potholes, that's another conversation.
The which?
The
Oh, the
potholes.
potholes. They're doing a really good job on potholes. They have a whole schedule on the potholes. Anything that you see as a pothole that they haven't captured, you should do see, click, fix.
Cambridge Turnpike.
Oh, that's, well, that's a whole project that's being done. So we had a long discussion about Cambridge Turnpike. The first of the contracts, it's going out to bid in the next month for the easier part of the resurfacing. The bridges will probably be 2019.
Oh.
So we'll be across Route 2 and finish with and the Cambridge Turnpike about the
Right.
same.
But if you do have potholes that you're thinking are not being seen or addressed, do you see, click, fix, and put them in? They respond to those really quickly. And May 5th is the drop-off, swap-off. Time to clean out your basement. I'll be directing traffic.
Do they
My
still
usual
need
job.
volunteers, do you know?
They have I haven't
It's
seen.
pretty popular.
I think they're pretty good. They always could use more volunteers. Boy Scouts help unload cars for the swap off.
So you were busy.
I was busy.
I have a few. The Commission on Disability met. They are working on an accessibility app which would be able to provide stores and restaurants that have accessibility and where the accessibility would be, where handicap parking spots would be. And they're going to be working on a possible AARP grant. They are also compiling a list of problem areas, and some of them being voting locations, that there have been a few issues. And we are going to be, I believe, tonight nominating a new member who did attend the meeting. The Library Committee had a extremely interesting meeting, a special collection exhibition overview with Leslie Wilson, the curator, and they put out a publication which they have letters and drawings by a woman, Ada Shepherd, who was a governess for the Hawthorns in Florence. And they're extraordinary. They're up on the second floor. She gave us a great tour. The woman who gave them to the library had just dropped in. I mean, there had not been any outreach. And
They just got dropped off?
She's a great-granddaughter of Ada Shepherd, and felt that the library would be a good spot to provide these documents. And they displayed it beautifully. So anybody who can, go to the library and watch that.
I was just there today. I don't think I saw that. Where?
Second floor.
Second floor.
Yeah. And then there was a discussion of, they have a couple of vacancies. They actually have 12 green cards on which to select from. And the green card, I mean, fascinating diversity. So they're trying to go through and figure out kind of exactly what would be the right fix or whatever. But it was interesting that they have as much interest. And I think the people who have expressed the interest know what they're doing, because it is, talk about a fun committee, that it's really very lively and very well done. So And the,
Green cards, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
I think they need to
Any of them have
share.
housing interests as
I
well.
think they're- Yeah.
somehow, I'm not, you know, if only we could just, you had to put a green card and you could pick out, we got to choose instead of them. But given that was, the dog park feasibility had to be canceled because the chair had, her dog was sick and she was not able to get the notice in on time.
Oh,
So they are meeting, I believe, next week. And they're also trying to plan a time for the recreation department to come and speak to them about the locations and whatever. And then they are going to have a public hearing sometime in May as well, so.
so do they have suggestions or recommendations?
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of information they've been able to get from everybody. They had their description of all of the properties which are over 5 acres, or all the properties between 1 and 5 acres, and some of the different locations that might work, and some of the cost, and I think they'll have a very informative presentation.
Great.
The next area is miscellaneous correspondence. Rob Carter has already been recognized, but welcome, and we're glad to have the Concord Journal be so well represented. We'll miss Henry. He was
Off to Framingham.
off to Framingham, but it was 4 years, wasn't he, in Concord? And
No, I think it was 3.
3. But I must say,
I have a particular knowledge of this because I was his first interview.
okay. But I thought his, I don't know if it was letter or commentary in the Concord Journal couldn't have been nicer. It was appreciated. I don't know if anybody else has any comments?
I know we're going to have a debrief of town meeting, but I think we should congratulate the moderator on a long but effective town meeting. And she did a great job.
Yeah.
And we'll get a chance to share with her at our next meeting. Is that
Right, she well,
She was away.
Yes.
look at your chair.
Yeah. We also, I think there were a couple of reasons. One is we wanted to get as much feedback from
Sure.
as we could, but also we had a fairly full agenda for this evening as well, so. So I think we're now ready for committee nominees.
Right. I think we have committee nominations. I nominate Ellen J. Hutt of 212 Katarina Heights to the Commission on Disability. Happy Godert of 606 Old Bedford Road to the Agriculture Committee as a full member. Joanne Lovejoy of 1689 Monument Street to the Agriculture Committee as an associate member.
Second,
Nominations don't
Oh,
need.
you're right.
second, yeah.
jumping the gun.
Thank you. And we have committee appointments. Should I go
Yes.
ahead with those? I move to appoint Brian Kramer of 820 Monument Street to the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee for a term to expire February 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks.